Princess Nyril stood near the wide crystal window of her starship, watching the Earth spin below. Its soft blue and white clouds looked peaceful, almost fragile. But Nyril was not here to admire beauty. She had a mission. She was the firstborn, daughter of the Varian Empress, and emotions were not allowed in her life. Nyril had been trained since birth to follow logic. The Varian Empire was vast, powerful, and strict. Feelings like love, sadness, or fear were considered dangerous. The Empire taught its children that emotions led to failure. Nyril believed it too. Her mother had once loved a man from another world and had almost given up her throne for him. That mistake had cost her everything, and Nyril had learned from it. She promised herself she would never fall for anyone. When the Empire received Earth's invitation to join the Intergalactic Peace Assembly, the Empress sent Nyril as a diplomatic figure. It was a test. If she succeeded, she would become the next ruler. Earth was a small planet, with weak defenses and no advanced space fleet. Most Varians did not care about it. But the Empire believed in controlling everything, even the small, and peaceful. Nyril was told to smile, speak softly, and win their trust. As the ship landed in a quiet area near Earth's main space station, Nyril stood straight in her silver robe. Her guards and staff moved behind her. Her long white hair was tied back, and her face showed no expression. Everything was planned. The humans would welcome her. She would offer peace, give a few gifts, and then return with their agreement. But one thing was not in the plan. His name was Daniel. Nyril first saw him at the welcoming ceremony. The human leaders stood in a line, ready to greet her. Most of them wore suits and had forced smiles. But Daniel stood at the end, dressed in a plain shirt and work pants. He looked tired, and his hands were stained with oil and metal dust. He didn't clap when others did. He just looked at her with curious eyes, not respectful, not rude, just calm. Nyril ignored him at first. She focused on the speeches, the handshakes, and the camera lights. But when her translator glitched during a press meeting, none of the human engineers could fix it. That's when Daniel stepped forward. "I built the backup system," he said. "May I take a look?" Nyril gave a small nod, and he walked up without fear. His hands moved quickly, and within minutes, the device started working again. He didn't wait for praise. He just smiled and walked away. That was the first time Nyril looked at him. Longer than a few seconds. There was something strange about him. He wasn't like the others. He didn't try to impress her or act nervous around her. He simply did what needed to be done and left. Later, her assistant, a young Varian named Kale, told her more about Daniel. He was not part of the political team. He worked in the mechanical department. He liked machines more than people. He had no family, no rank, and no interest in power. Nyril didn't understand. On her planet, people climbed ladders to gain favor. Even low workers dreamed of serving the royal court. But Daniel stayed away from all of it. He didn't seem to want anything. That made her curious. The next day, she visited the human research base near the docking port. She was supposed to review their space engines. As she walked through the metal halls, she found Daniel alone, fixing a damaged rover. "You don't bow," she said, her voice calm but sharp. Daniel looked up. "Didn't know I was supposed to." "You're speaking to a royal figure," she added. He wiped his hands with a cloth. "Are you here to check my manners or the engines?" Nyril stared at him. No one had ever talked to her like that. But instead of feeling insulted, she felt something else. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something she could not name. "The engines," she said finally. "Show me your work." Daniel led her around the room, explaining how he had improved Earth's fuel system by using small parts from crashed alien ships. He spoke with simple words but deep knowledge. Nyril listened without interrupting. For the first time on this mission, she wasn't bored. "You don't like diplomats," she said after a while. Daniel shrugged. "They talk too much. I prefer fixing things. Things make sense. People don't." "Not always." Nyril looked around the lab. It was messy, full of open panels and blinking lights. But it felt real, honest, not like the royal hall she had grown up in. She left without saying goodbye. That night, she stood at her window again, staring at Earth's clouds. Her mind should have been on strategy, on reports, and numbers. But she kept thinking about Daniel, about his simple words and quiet strength. Kale entered with a report. The Human Council invited us for dinner tomorrow. Shall I prepare a speech? Yes, she said without turning. Then she paused. Make sure Daniel is there. Kale looked surprised but not a dot when he left. Nyril touched the glass. She didn't understand what was happening inside her. She had faced warlords, debated with leaders, and stood in front of thousands. None of them made her heart feel strange, but this one human, this simple mechanic, had made her pause. It was nothing, she told herself. Just curiosity. She didn't know then that this moment was the beginning of something impossible. Something no Valyrian princess was trained for. Something far more dangerous than war or politics. She didn't believe in love, but love had already noticed her. The grand hall inside Earth's main diplomatic building was full of voices. Soft music played in the background. Delegates from different countries stood in groups, laughing, sharing food, and exchanging words in many languages. Princess Nyril sat at the center table, her face calm and unreadable. Round her sat the Valyrian staff and Earth's leaders, all dressed in formal wear. Nyril listened to the human leaders speak about peace, progress, and unity. Their words were polite but empty. Every sentence was carefully crafted, designed to please. She had heard speeches like this many times across the stars. It was the same on every planet, no matter the race or shape of the beings. Politics sounded the same. Her eyes moved across the hall. Her assistant Kale stood behind her chair, alert and silent. He leaned down to whisper. Daniel is near the back wall, alone. Nyril turned her head slightly. Daniel stood near a tall plant, holding a drink, far from the main tables. He wore a simple black jacket. He didn't look at her. He watched the people with calm eyes, almost like he didn't belong there. Nyril found it strange. Most humans would give anything for a moment near the Valyrian princess. They would ask for jobs, favors, or even just a picture. But Daniel had not tried once. Not when he fixed her translator, not when he showed her the engine room, and not now. In a hall full of leaders. After a while, Nyril stood and walked through the room. Some of the leaders noticed her and tried to speak, but she nodded politely. And past them, she reached Daniel and stopped in front of him. He looked up, surprised but calm. You are avoiding the center, she said. Daniel smiled slightly. Too loud near the front, and too quiet here, she replied. He shrugged. I like quiet. There was a short pause. Nyril glanced at the empty chair nearby. May I sit? Daniel raised an eyebrow. You're asking? I could command, she said, then added, but I'm not in the mood to be royal right now. He nodded toward the chair. Go ahead. She sat down, folding her hands on her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the party faded in the background. Nyril looked at him closely. His face was strong but simple. No fake smile. No fear in his eyes. Just honesty. Why do you work with machines? She asked. They don't lie, he answered. If something breaks, you fix it. If it doesn't work, you figure out why. No speeches. No guessing. Nyril looked down. People are not like machines. No, they're harder, he said. But sometimes worth the trouble. She looked back at him. Do you think I'm worth the trouble? Daniel paused. You're different. Most leaders want control. You just seem tired. Nyril gave a small laugh. It surprised even her. You speak without fear. I don't think fear helps anyone, Daniel said. I fix things. That's what I do. Nyril looked around the room again. All of this feels like a game. Everyone wants something. Power, deals, influence. And you? Daniel asked. What do you want? She stayed silent. The question was too close. What did she want? Her whole life had been planned. Study politics, lead missions, prove her strength, become ruler. She never had time to think about wants. She finally answered. I want peace. Not just between planets. I want peace inside my own head. Daniel nodded slowly. That's a good thing to want. They sat for a while, watching people move across the hall. A server passed by with glasses of juice. Daniel took one and offered it to her. She hesitated, then took it. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," he replied. Just then, one of the human generals walked over. He bowed to Nyril and spoke in a cheerful voice. "Princess, we are honored by your presence. Will you join us at the main table again?" Nyril stood and gave a polite nod. "I will return shortly." The general gave Daniel a curious look but said nothing. He walked away. Nyril turned to Daniel. "You confuse me." "How?" "You're the only person here who doesn't try to impress me," she said. "You treat me like I'm normal." "That's because you are," Daniel replied. "Under the titles and robes, you're just a person." Nyril looked at him for a long moment. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She wasn't sure if she should feel insulted or grateful. "I must go," she said. Daniel nodded. "I'll see you around." As she walked back to her table, her steps felt heavier than before. Her thoughts spun in circles. Why did this one human bother her so much? Why did she keep thinking about his words, his calm eyes, his way of looking at her without judgment? That night, in her private quarters, Nyril sat near the window again. Earth's moon hung bright in the sky. Kale entered with a report. "Do you wish to review the trade documents?" he asked. Nyril shook her head. "Not tonight." Kale paused. "Is something wrong, Princess?" She looked out the window. "A human asked me what I want. I didn't know how to answer." Kale tilted his head. "No one ever asks royalty that." "I think that's the problem," she said quietly. Kale placed the tablet on the table and stepped back. "If I may say so, Daniel is not like others. He's honest. I believe he sees more than most." Nyril gave a small nod. "Yes, that's what makes him dangerous." Kale frowned. "To you?" "To everything I've been taught," she said. She stood up and walked to the door. "I'm going for a walk." "Alone?" "Yes," she said. "Sometimes. The quiet teaches you more than a speech." As she walked into the silent hallways of the station, she didn't know where her steps would take her. But she knew one thing. Daniel had opened a door inside her, and she wasn't sure she could close it again. The space shuttle shook as it passed through Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Princess Nyril sat beside Daniel, her seat locked into place. Across from them were Tavarian guards and a young Earth scientist. The small team was headed to Earth's outer research station, a floating platform in low orbit. It was a routine visit, planned to inspect new energy systems and test Varian technology with human equipment. Nyril had chosen Daniel to join her team. The officials were surprised. Many had offered experts with higher rank and better titles, but she refused them. She said she wanted someone who understood the machines, not just spoke about them. Daniel didn't ask why she chose him. He packed his tools and joined the mission quietly, as always. He didn't try to flatter her or ask questions about her position. That made Nyril trust him more. Once the shuttle docked, the team stepped onto the floating station. Its halls were narrow, its lights dim. The air smelled slightly of metal and cleaning fluids. The crew welcomed them, gave short reports, and then returned to their tasks. Nyril walked beside Daniel as they inspected the main engine room. He checked each machine with care, tapping wires and noting weak signals. She asked questions, and he answered in his usual calm way. The others followed in silence. After a few hours, a message came through the intercom. A storm of magnetic particles had entered orbit. All shuttles were grounded. No ship could leave for several hours. The station would be sealed to protect the systems. The guards took positions near the central room, and most crew members stayed in their cabins. Only essential power remained. The soft hum of the engine slowed down. Lights dimmed. Nyril found herself in a control room with Daniel. It was the only place still running on emergency power. A long window showed the black sky, with stars blinking in silence. The storm outside was invisible, but strong enough to break ships apart. "We're stuck for now," Daniel said, checking the panel. "How long will the storm last?" she asked. "Could be 3 hours. Could be 10. Depends on the waves," he replied. Nyril sat on a bench near the wall. For the first time in days, there was no noise. No speeches, and no one watching her. Just her and Daniel in a quiet room. He sat on the floor beside a broken monitor and opened his tool case. Might as well fix something. Nyril watched him work. His hands moved with steady focus. His tools clicked softly as he adjusted wires and cleaned the frame. "You don't speak much unless needed," she said. "Most people talk too much." He replied, "Yet I always want to ask you more," she said. Daniel looked up. "You're allowed to." She thought for a moment. "Have you ever loved someone?" Daniel paused. The question was unexpected. "Yes," he said. "Once." "What happened?" "She left. Said I cared more about machines than her," he said. Maybe she was right. Nyril nodded. "Emotions are strange. On my world, love is seen as a threat to the mind. Do you agree with that?" he asked. "I used to," she said. "Now I'm not sure." Daniel stood up and placed the fixed monitor on the table. "Love is messy. It doesn't follow rules. That's what makes it real." She looked at him with quiet interest. "You speak like someone who understands more than machines." "Machines break," Daniel said. "People break too. But machines don't lie. People sometimes do." A soft buzz echoed through the room. One of the backup lights began to flicker. Daniel walked over and tapped the panel, then turned to her. "We need to check the power core. If it drops more, life support will stop working in this section." Nyril stood at once. "I'll come with you." They moved down a narrow hall toward the engine bay. The door creaked open, and warm air brushed past their faces. Inside, the power core blinked slowly, its glow dimmer than before. Daniel stepped up to the control unit. "It's overheating. Cooling fans failed. We'll need to reset them manually. Can it be done?" she asked. "Yes, but I'll need help holding the panel steady. It's old and warped." Without hesitation, Nyril rolled up her sleeves and held the panel as Daniel reached inside. The heat was strong. Sweat formed on her forehead, but she didn't move. "Almost done," Daniel said. A spark flew out. Nyril flinched but held tight. Daniel closed the last wire, and the machine gave a steady hum. Lights brightened. The air grew cooler. They stepped back, breathing hard. "You handled that well," Daniel said. "I've faced worse," she replied. "But I don't usually do it alone." "You weren't alone," he said. They stood in silence, looking at the steady core. Then Nyril spoke. "I don't feel fear when I'm with you." "I don't know why." Daniel looked at her gently. "Maybe because you know I don't want anything from you?" Nyril nodded slowly. "Everyone wants something, but you're different." "I just want to help," he said. "That's enough for me." As they returned to the control room, the storm outside started to pass. Systems began to restore. The crew returned to their duties, but something between Nyril and Daniel had changed. A silent connection had formed, not through words or titles, but through trust. In the middle of a power failure, in the middle of space, they had worked as one. Later that night, Nyril sat by the window again. This time, she didn't look at the stars. She thought of Daniel, his quiet way, his steady hands, his calm voice. She had spent her life fearing emotions, but today she had felt safe in the middle of a storm. Not because of her training, not because of her strength, because of him. Princess Nyril stood alone in her quarters, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The silver robe she wore was perfect. Her hair was tied high, her face calm, her posture straight. Everything looked the same, but inside, something had changed. Ever since that moment in the power core room with Daniel, she had felt different. She had faced danger before. She had worked through war zones and led missions into conflict zones. But nothing had made her heart beat faster the way Daniel's voice had when he said, "You weren't alone." Those words kept returning in her mind. She touched the edge of her robe and closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed, and for the first time in years, she felt unsure of herself, not because of fear, but because she didn't know how to deal with something that wasn't part of her training. Kale knocked once and stepped in. "The council meeting begins in 20 minutes, Princess. The human leaders will be waiting." Nyril nodded without turning. "Is Daniel attending?" Kale hesitated. "No, Princess." He declined the invitation. Her eyes opened slowly. Why? He said he's not part of the diplomatic team, Kale answered. He doesn't want to interfere with political matters. Nyril said nothing. Kale stood silently for a few more seconds, then left. The hall outside was busy. Diplomats, guards, and assistants moved quickly. Everyone had somewhere to go, something to say. But as Nyril walked toward the council room, her steps felt heavier than usual. Inside the main chamber, Earth's leaders sat at one side of a long table. Varian envoys sat across from them. Holographic screens floated above the table, showing trade agreements, shared technology plans, and future schedules. It was a formal event, designed to show progress between Earth and the Varian Empire. Nyril took her seat. She listened to the discussions and gave her opinions when needed. Her voice was calm, her answers sharp. No one saw the storm behind her quiet eyes. After an hour, the meeting ended. The humans smiled and clapped politely. The Varians nodded with satisfaction. Everyone stood up to leave. As Nyril turned toward the exit, an Earth ambassador approached her. He bowed slightly and said, "Your presence honors us. Princess, may I ask a question?" She nodded. "We noticed you requested one of our engineers on your last mission. Daniel, I believe." "Yes," she replied. "He's not a common choice for such visits," the ambassador said. "Is there something special about him?" Nyril kept her face still. "He is skilled. I chose him for that reason." The ambassador smiled. "I see. Some say you're building more than just a political bridge with Earth." "I build nothing based on rumors," she said. "Only facts." The ambassador raised his hands in apology and walked away. Nyril returned to her quarters and sat in silence. She felt tired, not from the meeting, but from the weight inside her chest. The world outside wanted control. Everyone had an agenda, but Daniel had none. That was what made him different, and that difference had become a problem. Later that night, she stepped out alone. The hall was quiet. Most of the station was asleep. She walked slowly toward the lower deck, where Daniel's workshop was located. The doors were closed, but the light inside was on. She paused for a moment, then knocked. The door opened, and Daniel looked surprised to see her. He stepped back and led her in. The room smelled of oil and metal. Wires hung from the walls, and a half-built robot stood in the corner. Daniel had dirt on his hands and a streak of black across his cheek. "You're working late," Nyril said. "Helps me think," he replied. "Machines don't lie." She looked around the room. "You didn't come to the meeting." "I don't belong in those rooms," Daniel said. "I fix things, not agreements." She nodded. "Still, I noticed you weren't there," he said. Down his tool and turned to her. "Why did you come here?" Nyril looked at him. "Because I needed to ask something." "Ask. Why do you avoid me?" Daniel was quiet for a few seconds. "Because you're not just anyone. You're a princess. Your world isn't like mine. You think that means we can't speak honestly? I think it means you'll leave." "And I'll stay," he said. "And it'll hurt." Nyril stepped closer. "I never said I would leave." "You never said you'd stay either," Daniel replied. She looked into his eyes. "I don't know how to answer that. I've never been allowed to choose." Daniel took a breath. "I'm just a man. I work with machines. I don't wear robes. I don't use titles. You're more honest than anyone I've ever met," she said. "And that scares me." Daniel gave a soft smile. Then we're both scared. Silence filled the room. The sounds of the station were far away. Only the soft hum of energy pulsed through the walls. Nyril stepped back. "I should return. My people are watching me." Daniel nodded. "I understand." As she reached the door, she turned and said, "I didn't come here as a princess tonight. I came as Nyril." Daniel didn't move. "Then you're welcome here anytime." She left without another word, but her heart beat faster than ever before. Back in her quarters, Kale waited with a data pad. Tomorrow's schedule. Princess, Nyril took it slowly. Cancel the next visit to the council. Kale looked surprised. "May I ask why?" She looked out the window. Earth spun below, quiet and endless. "Because I need time," she said. "To understand something important." Kale gave a small nod. "Very well." As he left, Nyril stood by the glass. She had been trained to lead empires. She had been taught to ignore emotions. But nothing in her training prepared her for this. The distance between worlds was nothing compared to the distance between two hearts. And yet, step by step, that gap was closing. The Earth-Vaurian Alliance ceremony was the most important event of the month. It was held in the Grand Chamber of the United Space Council. Bright lights shone down on rows of guests. From both planets, flags of Earth and Varia stood side by side. Diplomats, military leaders, scientists, and media from all over the galaxy had come to witness it. Princess Nyril entered the chamber wearing a shining silver robe lined with blue trim. Her face was calm as always, but inside, she felt a storm building. Her mind kept drifting back to Daniel. His words echoed again and again. Then we're both scared. She had told herself it was just curiosity, just respect. But deep down, she knew that was not the truth anymore. What she felt now was different. It was something deeper, something she didn't fully understand, and it refused to stay quiet. Kale walked beside her. You are scheduled to give your closing speech. Princess, Earth's leaders will speak first. Nyril gave a slight nod. Let me know when it's my turn. She took her place at the front table and listened as one speaker after another praised the new alliance. They spoke of trade, shared knowledge, peace between planets. It was the kind of talk she had heard many times before. Everything was going exactly as planned. Until Daniel stood up from the far end of the hall. At first, no one noticed him. He wasn't dressed like the others. He wore a dark shirt and pants, no medals, no symbols. But when he began walking forward, heads started to turn. A few whispered. Some looked confused. Security shifted their feet. Nyril's eyes locked onto him. Her heart jumped. Daniel stepped onto the stage without hesitation. He didn't wait for permission. He walked straight to her and stopped. Nyril, he said, I need to say something, and I need to say it here. The entire room fell into silence. Nyril stood slowly, her expression unreadable. Daniel, what are you doing? He looked directly at her, not at the cameras or the audience. You once said you never had the freedom to choose, so I'm giving you a choice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring. It wasn't made of gold or jewels. It was simple, shaped by hand, the metal softly polished. I don't care about titles, Daniel said. I don't care about planets or politics. I care about you, the person behind the crown. I know this is crazy. I know people will talk, but I won't stay silent anymore. He held out the ring. Nyril, will you marry me? The silence in the hall deepened. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the lights seemed to stop flickering. Nyril stared at him. Her mind felt frozen. Her heart raced like never before. This was not a dream. This was real. A human mechanic had just proposed to a Vaurian princess in front of the galaxy's leaders. The Vaurian delegates rose to their feet in shock. Kale took a step forward, unsure whether to stop Daniel or not. The Earth Council members looked between each other, unsure if this was part of the ceremony. Nyril opened her mouth, but no words came. She looked at Daniel's hand, holding that small ring, and felt everything inside her collapse and rebuild. At the same time, she turned and walked away. The room gasped. Daniel lowered his hand. His face didn't show anger or sadness, just quiet understanding. Nyril didn't return to her seat. She walked straight out of the chamber, her robe trailing behind her. Her guards followed but kept their distance. Once she reached her quarters, she locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed. She could still see his face, calm, brave, honest. No one had ever done something like that for her. Not with an agenda, not for power, just for her. But her people would never accept it. Her council would call her unfit. Her mother would demand her return. She had been raised to become a ruler, not a wife, and certainly not the wife of a human. Kale knocked softly on the door. Princess, I need time, she said. We are getting questions from both councils. They are waiting for a statement. I have none to give right now. Silence. Then Kale spoke again. For what it's worth, Princess, he meant every word. I've never seen anyone speak with such truth. She sat still long after he left. Later, That night, Nyril stood by her window, looking out at Earth's night sky. So many stars, so many choices, and only one truly scared her. Love. She had always seen it as a weakness. But Daniel had shown her another side. He had risked everything. He had put his heart in front of the entire galaxy and asked her to accept it. She pressed her hand to the glass. The cold surface grounded her. He had given her a choice. Now it was her turn to decide. In the silent room, under the stars, Princess. Nyril finally let the truth come forward. She didn't want a throne if it meant walking away from the only person who ever saw her as more than a crown, and deep inside, she already knew her answer. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the Earth Viridian Embassy Tower. Reporters stood outside, waiting for a response. The question on every channel was the same. Would Princess Nyril answer Daniel's proposal? Inside the tower, the air felt tense. Security moved in silence. Officials held whispered meetings. Kale stood near the door to the princess's chamber, glancing at his communicator every few minutes. No one knew what would happen next. In her private room, Princess Nyril had not slept. She sat on the floor, her silver robe folded beside her. Her long hair was down, her crown placed on a nearby table. She was not a princess right now. She was just Nyril, a woman standing at a crossroads. Daniel's voice still echoed. In her mind, his words had shaken something deep inside her. The look in his eyes had not been demanding. He had simply offered his heart and waited. Nyril stood up slowly and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired, but stronger. She picked up her communicator and called Kale. "Meet me in the West Hall in 20 minutes, she said. Kale answered quickly, "Yes, Princess." She dressed in a simple Viridian gown. No heavy jewels, no armor, just fabric that moved easily with her steps. When she left her room, her guards followed her quietly. Everyone in the hallway turned to look, but no one spoke. In the West Hall, Kale was already waiting. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes," Nyril said. "Call a meeting of both councils. I will speak to everyone, and I want Daniel present." Kale blinked, surprised, but didn't question her. "As you wish, an hour later." The grand chamber was filled again. This time, the atmosphere was heavier. There was no celebration, just quiet curiosity and concern. Viridian leaders sat upright, waiting. Earth's representatives looked nervous. Media drones hovered at a distance. Daniel stood to the side, not in the crowd, but not hidden either. He wore the same dark clothes from the day before. He didn't try to speak. He waited. Then the doors opened, and Nyril entered the chamber. Alone, she walked to the center of the room and turned to face both sides. Her voice was steady when she began to speak. "Yesterday, a moment happened that was not planned. A human asked me a question no one expected, and I walked away without an answer." The room remained silent, hanging on every word. "I was raised to serve my people," she continued. "I was trained to lead with strength and honor. I believed love was a distraction, a weakness. I believed duty was above all." She paused, letting her words settle in. "But I was wrong," she said. "Love is not weakness. It is the one thing that can bring two different worlds together. I have seen more progress in these last few days than in years of council meetings. And it began with a mechanic from Earth who saw me not as a princess, but as a person." Gasps rose softly across the chamber. Some whispered, others simply stared. "I have made my choice," Nyril said, "and I did not choose out of duty. I choose out of freedom." She turned toward Daniel and extended her hand. "If your proposal still stands, my answer is yes." For a full second, no one moved. Then Daniel stepped forward slowly. He took her hand, gently. There was no speech, no grand display, just a soft, honest smile. The moment was real, and everyone could feel it. One of the Viridian Council members stood up. "Princess, this is highly unusual. Are you sure this is not a mistake?" Nyril faced him. "It is not a mistake. It is a beginning." Another Earth official rose. "There are traditions, protocols, rules for royal unions." Nyril nodded. "Then we changed the rules." Whispers grew louder, but no one dared to argue further. The will of the princess had been made clear. And more than that, her people had seen her courage. Kale stepped forward and stood beside them. Let it be known across both planets, the princess has chosen. This decision is not political. It is personal, and it will be respected. As the meeting ended, the news spread faster than light. People from both worlds reacted with surprise, confusion, and excitement. Some disagreed, some celebrated. But no one could ignore it. Back in her chamber, Nyril stood with Daniel by the window. The city below looked small, but everything felt large now. You could have run, Daniel said. I almost did, she replied. What stopped you? You. She said, you made me feel something I never thought was real. Daniel smiled again. You still have time to back out. Nyril looked at him, serious and calm. I'm not going anywhere. They stood in silence for a while. No more words were needed. Outside, the stars began to appear one by one. They watched quietly, two souls from different worlds, standing together by choice, and somewhere deep inside, the impossible no longer felt impossible. The skies above Earth shimmered with spacecraft lights. Viridian cruisers hovered beside Earth satellites, not as enemies but as honored guests. The world watched as the first official Viridian-Earth Royal Union was prepared. Inside the Earth Viridian Unity Dome, workers moved quickly. Holograms displayed shifting patterns in the air. Decorations blended Viridian crystals with Earth's flowers. A long path led to a round stage in the center. Floating just above the floor, leaders from both planets had gathered. Reporters stayed back, watching through quiet drones. Daniel stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the collar of his formal suit. It was made of Viridian silver thread mixed with Earth cotton. A small symbol rested on his chest, showing both worlds. His hands trembled slightly. Kale entered the room. He wore his own ceremonial uniform, but had no weapons. For once, he looked calm. You look better than I expected, Kale said. Daniel laughed nervously. Thanks, I think. Kale crossed his arms. Are you ready for this? Daniel turned serious. I wasn't sure before, but now I am. I'm not doing this to make history. I'm doing this because I love her. Kale gave a small nod. Then you're ready. In another room, Princess Nyril stood still as her attendants adjusted the final touches on her robe. It flowed like starlight, woven with soft blue and silver strands. Her crown had been replaced with a simple headband of Viridian crystal and earth pearl. She had chosen peace over tradition. When her attendant stepped back, Nyril looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked royal, but she felt something new. Free. One of the attendants smiled. You look beautiful, Princess. Nyril turned. Not Princess, just Nyril today. As the ceremony began, music filled the dome. It was a mix of earth strings and Viridian harmony waves. The crowd turned quiet. Daniel stepped onto the stage first. He walked slowly, breathing deep. The lights above shimmered like stars. When he reached the center, he turned and waited. Then Nyril appeared. She walked with confidence, her steps smooth and graceful. Every eye in the room followed her, but she only looked at one person. Daniel. As she reached him, the ceremony master, a speaker chosen from both planets, stepped forward. She raised her hands. Today, the speaker said, we witness more than a union of two people. We witness a bridge between worlds, a promise that peace is not just a treaty, but a choice made by hearts. Nyril and Daniel stood face to face. Nyril. Of Viridia, the speaker said, do you choose this man of Earth freely, with no force, no pressure? Only by your will? I do, Nyril answered. Daniel of Earth, do you choose this woman of Viridia, with full heart and mind, ready to walk beside her in all things? I do, Daniel said. The speaker lifted a small silver ring, glowing with a faint light. This ring is formed from both Viridian steel and earth stone. Let it bind your promise. Nyril took the ring and gently slid it onto Daniel's finger. He did the same for her. As they did, the light on the rings pulsed gently, reacting to their bond. The speaker raised her hands again. Then let it be known, from this day forward, Nyril and Daniel are united, not by politics, not by force, but by love. the room filled with soft music and applause. Leaders stood, people clapped, and even Kale allowed himself a rare smile. Daniel looked at Nyril, a mix of joy and disbelief on his face. So what now? Nyril smiled. Now we live together. After the ceremony, a quiet reception followed. Instead of loud celebration, both sides agreed on a peaceful gathering. People from both planets talked, laughed, and shared stories. Barriers began to fall, replaced by understanding. Later that night, Nyril and Daniel walked outside the dome. The sky was clear, and the stars stretched across the horizon. Daniel looked up. "Do you ever miss Varia?" "Sometimes," she said. "But I don't belong only to one world anymore." He reached for her hand. "Neither do I." They stood quietly for a moment. Nyril turned to him. "I never believed in love. I thought it was weakness. And now?" he asked. "Now I believe it is strength," she said. "The kind that changes everything." Back in space, the Varian Council sent a message to their people. Earth's leaders shared their own statements. The story of the Union spread across both planets. There were questions, debates, and surprises. But more than anything, there was hope. Some people struggled to accept it. Change never came easy. But others saw the moment as a turning point. If two hearts from different stars could find each other, maybe peace was not so far away. As days passed, Nyril and Daniel began to live a new life. They moved into a home at the edge of Earth's mountains, near a quiet lake. It was far from the loud cities and busy centers. They wanted peace, and they found it there. Kale visited sometimes, bringing news from Varia. Nyril stayed connected to her people, but she no longer ruled alone. She led by example. Now Daniel returned to building things. He fixed ships, taught students, and helped design new tech that blended both worlds. But every evening, he returned home, where Nyril waited with stories from the stars. Their love didn't solve every problem, but it reminded people of what was possible. That sometimes the greatest power in the universe was not in weapons or war, but in choosing someone who makes you better. And as the stars watched silently above, two souls once divided by distance and belief walked together into a future they chose with their hearts.